So, we've covered the state's duty to protect and the corporate responsibility to respect human rights. But let's be real. What happens when those systems fail? What happens when harm is actually done and a person's life or a whole community is turned upside down by a business's actions? This is where the framework truly meets its biggest test, providing access to remedy. Think about it. A right without a remedy isn't really a right at all. It's just a nice idea on a piece of paper. So the central challenge here is, how do we build a bridge from harm to justice? How do we make sure that when things go wrong, there's a clear, accessible path to making them right again? And that's exactly where Pillar 3 comes in. Access to remedy. This is the bedrock that really holds the entire protect, respect, and remedy framework together. The guiding principles are crystal clear that the whole model is incomplete without this final critical piece, ensuring that victims can actually get justice. Now, when we say remedy, you might just think about money, right? A financial payout. But an effective remedy is so much more than that. It's about truly repairing the harm. That could mean a formal apology. It could mean restitution to restore what was lost. Or, and this is so important, a guarantee that this will never, ever happen again. And this idea ties directly back to what we talked about in Pillar I, the state's duty. See, protecting human rights isn't just about preventing abuse from happening in the first place. It's also about creating real pathways to justice when that prevention fails. The two responsibilities are completely inseparable. So how exactly does a state provide this access? Well, the framework lays out two main kinds of official, state-run channels that people can turn to. Let's dig into what those are. On one hand, you've got your judicial mechanisms. This is the classic court system we're all familiar with, right? Where you go through formal legal proceedings to determine who's liable and a judge orders a remedy. Then, on the other hand, you have non-judicial mechanisms. Think of these as state-run bodies like a National Human Rights Commission or an ombudsman's office. They can investigate complaints and help sort things out in a way that's often more flexible and less formal than a full-blown court case. But here's the thing. Having these systems just exist on paper is totally useless if people can't actually use them. The state's duty is to actively tear down the barriers, whether they're legal, practical, or financial, that stand between a victim and the justice they deserve. And believe me, these barriers are no joke. I mean, just imagine, you've been wronged, and now you're facing insane legal costs. Or maybe there's no legal aid available at all. You're trying to navigate all these complicated procedures on your own, and you might even be scared of retaliation for speaking up. And a justice system that moves at a snail's pace? Well, that can be a denial of justice all by itself. These are the very real-world problems that Pillar 3 says states absolutely have to fix. Okay, but it's not all on the state. The guiding principles also put a huge emphasis on businesses stepping up and creating their own mechanisms for remedy. And honestly, this can often be the first and even the most effective line of defense. And the thinking behind this is pretty straightforward but really powerful. It's just so much better for everyone involved to fix a problem early and directly, right at the source. This can stop a small grievance from snowballing into a major conflict or a severe human rights violation that needs the state to get involved. This is what's known as an operational level grievance mechanism. Now, that sounds a bit formal, but all it really is a clear official process that a company sets up so that anyone affected by their operations, an employee, a customer, someone living nearby, has a direct line to raise a concern and get it sorted out. Yeah, you can really think of it like an early warning system. For the company, it's this incredibly valuable way to get feedback and see where problems are popping up. And for the people who are affected, it gives them a direct and often much faster way to get a resolution. It's a proactive tool that's good for managing risk and for building better relationships. But of course, setting up a hotline or a suggestion box means nothing if it's just for show, if no one actually trusts it. That's why the framework lays out a really clear set of standards. They're called the effectiveness criteria. Basically, these are the benchmarks that tell you if a grievance process is the real deal or just a symbolic gesture. All right, let's run through the first four. First, it has to be legitimate. That just means people have to trust that it's fair. Second, accessible. People need to know it exists, and it has to be easy to use. Third, predictable. There should be a clear process and time frame, no surprises. And fourth, equitable, making sure everyone gets a fair shot, especially people who might be in a vulnerable position.
Okay, and the list goes on. Number 5 is transparent. You gotta keep people in the loop about what's happening. Number 6, rights compatible. This is a big one. Any solution has to actually align with international human rights standards. Number 7, it has to be a source of continuous learning. The company needs to use this feedback to get better and prevent the same problems from happening again. And finally, it has to be based on genuine dialogue with the people who are affected.
When you strip away all the technical terms, it all really boils down to one simple, powerful word: trust. It's the cornerstone. Because if the people a system is supposed to help don't believe in it, if they don't think it's fair or that it can actually achieve something, they're just not going to use it. Simple as that. And that leaves us with the powerful question at the very heart of Pillar 3. Because if you build a system for justice, but nobody trusts it, or nobody can even access it, does it really exist at all? A remedy on paper isn't a remedy in practice. The real test isn't whether these systems look good in a report, but whether they actually deliver justice for the people who need it most.